Brian, what's up, man? Welcome to the Dad Edge.
Not a whole lot. Today's actually slower than normal, but I am glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
A slow day. Wait, slow.
Weird.
Wait, what is that? Right?
Doesn't happen very often.
You got to embrace those, man. They don't come around very often.
Right. Yeah.
So
Eat a banana and sit back.
that's right. Really where I want to start, Brian, I want to start with you growing up. What was your childhood like, and even the relationship like with your own dad growing up?
Uh, so I'm the oldest of eight.
Of
Out
eight?
of eight.
Of
Yes.
eight.
In 10 years. 8 and 10 years. So
What?
yeah, I call my mom La Máquina, which is Spanish for the máquina. Um, and so eight of us in 10 years.
Wow, man.
My dad was a teacher and my mom didn't work. So we didn't have good food. And hand-me-downs were the only downs we got. So um, yeah, I grew up on a farm, learned work ethic really young. I was kind of adrenaline junkie slash whatever, tried, and that conflicted a little bit with my parents, and I ended up moving out when I was 15. So I've been out on my own since I was 15. I don't have a bad or strained relationship with my parents. Even then, I didn't. It was a mutual agreement. My dad said, you either obey the rules or you go to juvie, or you're strong enough to be on your own. You make the decision. And so I made the decision to be out on my own.
So
And
tell me, yeah, tell us about that. What'd you do? Just like,
well, at first, I lived in my friend's basement.
don't we
And so,
all?
yeah, yeah. I mean, come on, that's your go-to.
Yeah.
But he got his girlfriend pregnant his junior or sophomore year. So she moved in the basement, and third wheel stuff. So I was out of the basement because that was going to cause some contention there. And I actually got into an apartment with some people who were older than 18, and then I contributed my part of the rent. And I stayed in that all the way until halfway through my senior year, at which time they got evicted for stuff. I don't know what it was, to be honest. All I know is police showed up, they got evicted, and that means I got evicted because I wasn't even on the lease. And so then I lived in my truck for 6 months, for the last 6 months of school. And I showered at truck stops in school, at the gym, because I played sports. So I had a locker in there. And that was interesting. It was an adventure. I had a 1977 Chevy Custom Deluxe bench seat. It's basically a Tempur-Pedic with a gear shift in your back. And I lived in that for 6 months, and then I was 18 and on the road to Arizona, and just kept going from there.
So, and why? What was the biggest reason for moving out? I mean, obviously, it sounded mutual. It sounded kind of somewhat peaceful. But what was the main drive there?
Wouldn't call it peaceful. Let's
Okay.
just say there was contention there. That's what caused it. But at the same
Yeah.
time, it was like, I saw why they wanted me out, because I wanted to do my own stuff, and they didn't want me to do that stuff. So it wasn't like it was horrible stuff. I just didn't deal well with authority at the time. So, I joined the military later because that makes sense. And then, it just kind of morphed that way. And yeah, I just wanted the freedom. And I've always been pretty independent. I'm still kind of that way. And I felt like I could do it. And for me, it was important to not just be out on your own, but still play sports in high school, still get decent grades and graduate in high school, still work a job to pay for bills, do all those things, not just because people could get kicked out of their home and then not make it through all those things. And then you didn't really prove anything. Yeah, I don't want to judge anybody. You proved something, but that wasn't what I wanted to prove. What I wanted to prove was I could do it and check all the boxes without staying at home.
Wow. So, did you have a full-time job and everything? Like even when you were living in your truck?
Yeah, yeah, I would work the sporting goods counter at the late night shift at Kmart, if before I think Kmart doesn't exist anymore, but
Oh yeah.
that's
I
where
think
I
it's
worked.
called Amazon now. So,
Yeah, it is. And then in the summertime, I always worked for summers where I earned most of my money. I was a farm hand. I drove dump truck and tractors and all that stuff all through the summer. So I would earn most of my money during those 3 months, and then put it in the bank, and then I would augment through the year with the Kmart stuff.
and what sports did you play in school?
football and wrestling in high school and in junior, junior high, I played everything because you could overlap all those seasons. As you get older, the seasons get longer and they can't really go back to back to back. But in high school, I played, well, you don't play wrestling, you wrestle. And then
You wrestle.
I played football and ended up playing football in college. Well, I say practicing football in college. I wasn't good enough to start. So I was on the meat squad, if you will.
And where'd you go to college at?
Utah State.
Okay. Wow. And so did you, I'm guessing you had to pay for tuition all on your own.
I did and I didn't, right? So there was I enlisted in the military. So I had the GI Bill and whatnot, and then I did the ROTC later, halfway through my college career.
Hmm.
Football did pay for some stuff, and so yeah, I mean, I did work in college. I was a waiter for Chili's, and then that's where I started flipping homes. So I started flipping homes in college, and I still do today.
That's unreal, man. And then, so obviously, lieutenant colonel in the military, a pilot of Apache helicopters. When you first joined the military, was that your vision, or was this something that more evolved over time?
There was some evolution, but when I joined the military, I knew I wanted to fly helicopters.
Okay.
Right. So I didn't know it was going to be the most badass helicopter in the world. Right. But because I didn't even understand that at the time, I just, oh, it's cool. Yeah, it's cool. And then I flew it, and then I've flown other helicopters, and it's the most badass helicopter in the world. Right. So that wasn't there was some evolution. And then I realized I'm not in the Army, I'm not going to continue to fly helicopters. So I transitioned out of the Army into the Air Force, where I fly the Air Force's version of a Black Hawk, and combat search and rescue is what I fly now.
That's unreal, man. Uh, what has been so when you say flying the most badass helicopter on the planet, like what is it about that helicopter that you're just like, hell yeah, this is
It,
badass?
it's just so like it's maneuverable. It's just like you can like I kind of this sounds like a BMW commercial. I felt one with the machine. Like I could just really I got to a point where I could think it and it's happening. And it was just and there's all these weapon systems on it. So it can go from, you know, this 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 machine that ensures salvation of friendly forces and guarantees damnation of enemy forces in the same impact, right? The same moment it's doing both of those things. So it's an angel of life and an angel of death at the same time, if you will. And just being the person that's controlling that was just kind of I was in awe all the time. I'm like, holy crap, this thing is it just does its job well, you know.
That
And
is
if
so
you learn
cool.
how to integrate with it, you it's overwhelming. Honestly, it's
Yeah.
overwhelming.
That's really cool, man. And you still do this today. You still
I,
fly?
I am really in the what we call the pasture. I'm on my retirement. Like as you can see, I got facial hair. I'm taking leave in big swaths as I'm marching really close to my retirement. And so I'm more or less on what they call terminal leave, but I'm just taking it as regular leave for some reasons, personal
Got it.
reasons. But yeah,
If you're cool with it, do you mind if we backtrack back to your family a little bit?
there you go, wherever we want.
Yeah, I'm just I keep thinking about you being like, so I have a 15-year-old. Like I have four boys. I have 17, 15, 9, and 7, but I have a 15-year-old. And I'm sitting here thinking about having that conversation with my son of like, well, you can do this, this, or this, and then he moves out. And how old are you now?
I am 46 years young.
Okay. So you and I are right around the same age. Is your dad still alive?
He is.
Okay. What's
Yeah.
your relationship with him now?
Yeah, we're good. Like I said, it wasn't even like I couldn't go visit when I moved out. I would go visit my brothers and sisters, my mom and dad. We, I'd eat meal over there every once in a while, you know. So it wasn't like estranged ever. And then I didn't really get to know my brothers and sisters too much when I was a kid, just because I was really selfish. You know, I was all focused about what I was going to do and how I was going to do it. And I was motivated, I was competitive, and those things helped me to learn other things that later, you know, learn a little bit more about selflessness and altruism and all those kind of things. But at that point in my life, it was really all Captain Me Planet, if you will. Um, and I didn't really get to know my brothers and sisters that well while in the home. Since then, I've gotten to know them pretty well, and they're, some of the most amazing people in my life. In fact, my son asked me, he says, "Who's your best friend?" And I said, "My brothers. My brothers are my best friends," and they are. They really are. So, so the family connection really, I don't think it suffered from that. I don't think it was that great to begin with because of my own doing and some I would call it a wedge between my dad and I were both strong personalities, and honestly that was probably a catalyst for a lot of what happened. But we both recognize that as adults now, and we don't uh we don't there's no fireworks. We'll just say that.
So is there, let me ask you this, being the oldest of 8 in 10 years, I'm sitting here even trying to do the math. I was like, oh my God, is that even like humanly possible? Were there some twins in there?
No twins. No twins.
No twins.
It is
Holy
humanly
cow.
possible.
That's unreal, man. That's like crazy unreal. Okay. So um I would just, my background, I come from a very strained relationship with my mom was married 3 times. I mean, she got divorced from my biological father when I was like 9 months old, didn't remember him.
Hmm.
Make a really long story short, I didn't even have or start a relationship with my biological father until I was 30, which was, 17 years ago. But that was a complete and total fluke and an accident. I just interviewed Nikki Six, who's the founder of Motley Crue. And he's got like this crazy childhood as well. Father abandoned him. Mom was, a handful as well. And I asked him a lot of questions, and I would like to ask you pretty much the same context or the same theme of questions, which is, if you grew up in an environment like, man, 8 kids, you're the oldest of 8. Obviously there were some things that maybe your dad gave you those ultimatums because there were things that were happening, right? And maybe there was some strain on the relationship when you were younger. But I'm sure you probably also look back. You and I are old enough now to look back, and it's like, you know what? There were some amazing lessons that came out of growing up that way. Or there were some amazing experiences that, my parents weren't perfect, but I learned quite a few things. But if you were to look back and just identify some things that maybe your dad did by maybe leading example, or he just sat you down and taught you some lessons, what has served you very well into your adulthood?
I would say two things that have served me very well, or very good. I don't know the right English for that, but need versus want, right? Need versus want was learned at a very early age for me, and in America, I think there's adults that don't know the difference between needs and wants, right? And and if you understand what a need is versus what a want is, and you're at a point where you got to make a decision on where you're going to put your assets or your efforts, you're going to put them towards your needs, right, instead of your wants, right? And I see so many people get that backwards, and then somebody else has to come in and pick up the slack to give them their needs, or they're just not going to, or they're going to really be in a hard place, right? So I think that was one of the really good ones that he taught me and instilled in me. The other one is work first, reap the rewards later, right? So although I don't think he knew how to reap the rewards. He grew up as a farmer, same as like I grew up on a farm, but my dad was a teacher. And we started out as dairy farmers, and then he became a teacher, and then I kept working on the farms. But um, he grew up working and almost felt guilt when he did something that was a reward. He would say, "Work first, get your reward," but I don't think he ever felt good getting in the reward.
Hmm.
So it taught, and I kind of felt that for a while too. I learned that, but then I realized, no, life is we're here to have joy, right? So you can have joy in working. There's no absolutely, but you can also go and play, right? You can also go and play, and that's not bad. So it was a twofold lesson. Both, he showed me work first, play later is what he said, but he worked first, didn't play, And that was also taught me. I was like, I don't want that. I don't want that. That there has to be play too. Right. So it was a valuable lesson. It wasn't necessarily by example. It was the antithesis of the example. But
Got it. Wow. I mean, those are good lessons. Yeah, I was just curious. I'm always so curious about the background of a lot of our guys who come on, especially the ones who decide to go into the military, and even to constantly, I mean, the experience that you've had in the military and the training you've gone through, it's definitely not the ordinary. I would say it's the extraordinary. And so I'm always so curious about what compels somebody to go, as far as they do in the military, and have had anything to do with your childhood growing up. Do you think you come across to me, Brian, obviously as someone who has a lot of drive, a lot of independence. Do you think you learned a lot of that growing up just in your own household? Or I know sports play a huge role in that for young men, especially I mean, especially wrestling. That sport will teach you some serious grit. And I've got one of my coaches in the Dad Edge. He helps me coach our he's one of 4 coaches in what we call the Dad Edge Accelerator, which is our dad business owner mastermind. And so Jake Herbert, he's one of our coaches. He is in charge of client success. And Jake, he's an Olympian, was on the U.S. Olympic team, wrestled for literally about 30 years out of the 36 years he's been on this earth. And it's fascinating to me when things come his way that would normally stress out a person, and he's like, he'll show up to a call and be like, yeah, he's like, got an hour and a half of sleep last night. Kid kept us up quite a bit. And we're like, and you're smiling? It's like, yeah, yeah. What am I gonna do? Be pissed about it? Like, come on, man. Gotta smile at these things. And we ask him all the time, we're like, how are you so resilient? He's like, man, 30 years of wrestling, getting knocked around and all that other stuff. He's like, it's programming. It's programming. But for you, I mean, did sports have anything to do with the resilience work you're doing today? Was it the beginning of that?
I credit sports for a lot of things. The reason I wrote the book Cleared Hot was really on the premise of what you're just saying right there. Is why? Why? Why was I able to experience what I experienced, taking lives or whatever it is down the range, which isn't, it's ugly. You're operating in the ugly, but the challenge is to not let that ugly operate in you, right? So why was that? It wasn't that hard for me to do that and grow from it, right? And then there was a lot of guys that it was really hard, like, and it to the all the way to the end of the spectrum where they tipped their lives, right? So that's a big spectrum of growing from an experience where PTSD is what I thought I coined that phrase, and it turns out it's a real thing. PTS, post traumatic stress growth, versus the PTSD that we always hear about. And that discrepancy in that spectrum bothered me. And that's when I got back, I was like, really got with people with 3 letters behind their names, PhDs and everything, and said, why can some people, without, I'm not saying no effort, there's effort, but with what I would call normal life effort, come out of that stronger, and other people with greater than normal life effort are struggling and devastated. And some of those things you can't teach. Like, I did have a nuclear family, right? I had a mom and a dad. They weren't divorced. There wasn't that kind of trauma. So that gives a little level of stability to certain things. Or, you know, what you come to this world as, some kids are just, you see little toddlers, and there's kids that'll get punched in the face and they'll fall down and get right back up, and other kids will just cry. And so there's something that we come to this planet with, but we also found things that I was doing, techniques that I was doing before, during, and after these traumatic events that likely caused a higher level of resiliency. So to your question, I think sports did map things out for me. But how I approach sports was already how I approach sports, right? Like, you're right with wrestling. There's nothing more exposing to being mano a mano in man lingerie on a mat in front of how many people, right?
Yeah.
And you're either getting your butt kicked or kicking butt, right? And everybody sees it, right? And then at the end, if that's not enough, you go to the middle of the mat, and if you lost, they hold your hand down and the other guy's hand up, right? So that is, there is some value that comes from that. I often say I learned more from sports on how to be successful in life than I did from school. And that's not a, people don't like that phrase. Some people don't. My dad's an educator. I'm not sure if he likes that. But I really do think that there's some lessons there. But some of it is just how you're wired. I really do think some of it is how you're wired. Now, there are things you can learn. And that's what we kind of distilled and digest and really ripped down in the book is, here's some things that I was doing that actually caused growth, likely caused growth to come from these experiences versus, devastation. And they were the things that you could teach. I didn't focus on the things that you can't teach, because what's the point? There's no point in focusing on what's already there, or is either there or it isn't there.
I would love for some of the guys in the audience to take some nuggets from this, like literally to get off this podcast and say, you know what, I could probably do that, or I could start doing that, or now I understand that it's more clear. What are some of the maybe two or three some of the most digestible and easy to implement tactics that we can implement into our own lives to become more resilient?
Well, there's two things that I'll tell people. It's kind of a little technique, just little practices that they can do that make a big difference. The first one is perspective building by, and we've all heard this attitude of gratitude, right? That there's nothing cosmic about that. But how do you turn that into a muscle that happens automatically instead of just something that we hear as a catchphrase? My son, which I don't know if I said it when we were recording or not. My son's adopted. I've had him since he was wet, day one. And then I've had full custody since he was 4.5, 5 years old. And then he's African American, so there's a little bit of differences there. And one of the things that we did, and I've done my whole life, is just play this game called Grateful, right? In the morning, well, there's three things that we're grateful for and why, and we try not to repeat. Now, this isn't a lot of people do this in different ways, right? This isn't cosmic. But here's a cool story, and this is how it becomes more of a muscle thing versus an effort thing. Like when I say muscle thing, like at first, muscles, they're hard to work at first, and after a while they get stronger, and it just automatically does it, right? So with my son, he was 6 years old, and we were doing great. Well, we hadn't done Grateful yet. We did it on the way to work, on the way to school in the mornings, and we're on our way to school in the mornings, and it's Martin Luther King, was it January or February? I can't remember. Anyway, I think it's January. Martin Luther King Day, and they're talking about it in school, and he brings it up, and he's like, "Hey, you heard of Martin Luther King?" I'm like, "Yeah, I've heard of Martin Luther King." And he goes, "He's kind of a hero." I was like, "Yeah, I agree with that." It's like, "He changed the world." I'm like, "Yep, I agree with that too." And he goes, "He gave a speech. You ever heard of it?" I'm like, "Yeah, I've heard of it." And he goes, "Can we listen to it?" I'm like, "Well, yeah, we can listen to it." So, I'm driving and pulling up on YouTube as carefully as I possibly can. It's right, I'm a pilot. I got cross-checked. So I bring it up, and he's watching it, and it's the abridged version. So it's from the hills of Tennessee. I have a dream, right? And he gets through the whole thing. And he goes, "That's awesome." I was like, "Yeah, it's awesome." He goes, "Can I listen to it again?" I'm like, "Holy crap, 6 years old. He wants to listen to it." "Yeah, go ahead, listen to it again." Listens to it again. Then he goes, "Hey, can we do Grateful?" And I'm like, "Okay, I know where this is going. I can see where this is going." We do Grateful, and he goes, "I'm grateful for Martin Luther King." I said, "Okay, but you got to say why." And this is where I expected him to say Martin Luther King. I did not expect the second response on the why. And he said, "Because of what he did, I can be your son." Right. So
He's 6.
6-year-old kid tears me up in a heartbeat, because that is impactful. And it was because we've done this grateful exercise on a daily basis, where he had to think not just why I'm grateful for this. I mean, not just that I am grateful for this, but why. And his why was so powerful that it changed my gratitude for Martin Luther King. It raised it up that day. And I told him that. I said, "Buddy, because of what you just said, my gratitude for Martin Luther King is greater now than it was 5 minutes ago, because you made it personal. You brought it to our home." And that just showed me that little technique really can change your perspective day in and day out. He's 6 years old and he's giving word dropping words of wisdom that literally impacts my life still when I share it. Right. So that's one thing.
That that is incredible, man. Like that is so incredible hearing that from a 6-year-old.
Yeah.
And just the fact that, I mean, we can all learn something by viewing the world through that type of lens. You know, this attitude to gratitude, I wrote it down as you said it, but then I made a notation here in bold that said, but make it personal and make it different. You
Yep.
know,
No repeats. No repeats.
yeah, no repeats, because it's really easy to be like, I'm grateful for the house over my head or whatever. I've noticed this too when I'll get stressed out about something that's really dumb, and I know it's dumb. And I had one of our members in our mastermind talk about his perspective on shoes in his house. He's got 6 kids. I've got 4. And he's like, dude, you know what drives me crazy is when I see, or what used to drive me crazy is all of these freaking shoes, man, all over the place. They're everywhere. Like I trip on them. They're in the living room. They're under tables and under the dining room table. Like I'll go to eat my lunch and I'll step on a pair of shoes. He's like, well, you know what's really cool about shoes? It reminds me my kids are still here and what age they're at, because I know these shoe sizes change in a heartbeat and they change faster than we even realize. And and I have 4 boys. I don't even have girls, and I have shoes everywhere. And I don't know what it was, man, but ever since then, I probably heard that perspective a year and a half ago. And I don't get stressed out about shoes anymore. And I know that sounds minuscule, but it's more like just kids not picking up their stuff. But there's something really cool about going into the living room and I see a pair of size 4s, a pair of size 7s, an 11 and a half and a 12. And it just, and I see sometimes multiple pairs and I'll think to myself, well, here's Ethan, who's 17 with his 11 and a halfs, 12s. And I remember when he was in these size 5s like Colton is. And sooner or later, I'm going to blink and Colton's going to be in these 12s, just like Ethan is. And I need to capture and embrace every freaking moment that I possibly can with these kids. The other thing too is that making something personal like that, to where you're not just thankful for, oh, I have the means to support my kids that they can put shoes on their feet. I'm thankful because these size 12s are still here, which means my oldest son is still here, which I know I'm on borrowed time at this point, and I need to embrace that as well. Versus just being like, these kids don't pick up their crap. What the hell?
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I got shoes in my bathroom right now that I was frustrated at. So
Yeah, before you know it, the
he's
shoes are
almost,
as big as
I'm size
ours.
10 and he's size 8. So he's almost there as a
Oh
10
my
year old.
God. That's crazy, man. He's gonna be a
Yeah.
monster.
Oh, yeah.
So
He's fine.
attitude to gratitude, making it personal. What else?
So one thing I teach men who've been through war and whatever is to identify their mountains. And what that means is when I first deployed, my first deployment, I've done 6 deployments now, but my first time I was the first guy on ground because I was in our admon or advanced party. So I flew over with our helicopters with 2 other guys, and we landed in Bagram uh, early morning, and so it was kind of like this anticipation. We're in a C-17, and the back of the C-17 just kind of lowers that big door in the back, and it's starting to come down. And that like in the movies, right? This real bright light comes in, and our eyes have been in the dark for how long, so can't really see anything. And slowly it comes down, and what first thing that stood out to me is it didn't stink. No, I don't know why. I just thought since we're at war, it's going to stink, right? It's just I wasn't even a conscious thought. It's just something that was there, and when it smelled cool and refreshing, it was shocking to me. I was like, this actually smells good. Now, if we'd landed in Kandahar, there's a bunch of poo ponds there, it would have stunk. But in Bagram, it didn't, and it opened. And the second thing that really stood out to me is I could see the mountains, and they were like the Rocky Mountains. They were snow covered, beautiful mountains. And I was like, here we go. I just didn't, it's beautiful. And then when I'm flying over those mountains in a warship, I'm flying over and I'm looking at it. I snowboard and I snowmobile and I do this thing. And I'm looking, well, that's a cool track there. That would be awesome there. You know, it's beautiful. And, you know, I have to watch out for mines, but it's beautiful. And just kind of like couldn't believe it that here we are in a country that has so much ugly going on, but it's so beautiful right there, just right there, almost touchable, right? And then we get a call from a ground guy. And a ground guy, his whole demeanor is urgency. They are taking fire. They are in a bad situation, and they are calling for us to come and throw ordnance down at the enemy that has their heads down. So he is focused on that gunfight. He is absolutely in that gunfight. And then we're coming down, and now we're in that gunfight. And our focus, we call it front sight focused. We are looking where we're going. We are throwing down rockets in 30 millimeter and hellfire. We are engaging the enemy. And that's all we're thinking about. We're in the gunfight. But in the middle of that gunfight, those mountains never went anywhere. Those mountains were always there. They stayed beautiful. The gunfight was intense and maybe even fools us into thinking this is our for real. This is our forever. This is our where we're at. This is our gunfight. This is what we're focused on. But it's finite. It will end. The mountains are infinite. They're there. They're not going anywhere. And if you raise up, we were, 30,000 feet or whatever, you start to see the curvature of the earth. I don't care if you're over the ugliest place on the planet, it's still beautiful because of the grandeur of what you're seeing. So that's just raising your perspective. And if you raise out, and I've never been to space, but I imagine if you're in space and you're looking at the globe and you see it as a celestial body or whatever you want to call it, where it's got land masses of clouds and blue and compared to the sheer massness of space, that's beautiful. And it's not beautiful in every direction. It's just beautiful because there is no direction. And that's the true infinite. It just is. Beauty just is. But on that planet that's so beautiful and majestic, or whatever you want to call it, at any given point, how many gunfights are happening, right? How many gunfights are people fooled into thinking that is their forever reality? That is what they have to focus on. How many are happening right now as we speak? They just are. So it's a perspective exercise. My son recently was at school and he was really feeling like he didn't belong. Now he's got some things because kids are amazing at how cruel they can be.
Oh, yeah.
Even though they're kids, they're innocent, but they're not, so it's like, he has a lot of kids that really make fun of him that he's adopted and that his dad's white and all these things and tell him that he doesn't really belong anywhere. And one kid even told him, he said, nobody wants you here.
Oh my God.
That's why your mom left you and won't come back. Right. And that's kind of how he feels. His mom left him and won't come back because he hasn't seen his mom in a long time. Talks to her, but he hasn't seen her. And couldn't have hit him more direct in the heart. Couldn't have. I mean, kids are precise with their weaponry. And he said to his teacher, he's like, I just don't feel like I belong in this world. Right. And then I get the call and I'm like, well, this is what I do with men. And now my kid is experiencing this. So I sat him down and explained the story that I just explained to you about identifying your mountains. What are your mountains? What are your things that you can trust and that are not going to go away, that are your infinite? And one thing that made me tear up is his first one was me.
Not surprised.
And and he identified some other ones. Football. Football was one of his mountains, and he identified these mountains. And so I said, when you get in school and somebody starts saying things, you understand that's a gunfight. That's a gunfight. That will pass. And I want you to go back. I want that to be a trigger. When somebody makes you upset, it triggers you to go to your mountains. Go into your mountains. Be grateful for your mountains. So it's still the gratitude thing, but it's just another exercise. And so at the end of the day, we'd had an accountability piece to be like, so did you have to go to your mountains today? I was like, yeah, I did here and here, how did it help? Yes, it helped, and he's been doing great since then. And we just keep following through. But that's just one little thing that you can do is identify what your mountains are. It also helps with that gratitude piece. Identify what's really there for you and will always be there for you. Right. And it could be a real mountain, because they are beautiful and they aren't going anywhere. For me, nature is one of my mountains. So
I've never heard of that as far as like, really know your mountains. It's an anchor for your gratitude. Brian, when you were sharing that story, when you got welled up with emotion, I did too over here. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that I was severely bullied growing up. And one of my boys, I won't name who, because I have found out that as my kids get older, they listen to my podcast. and, and so do their friends. Not that
no.
but I also want to be careful. One of my boys is dealing with that now. And it's one of the younger guys. And what I've noticed is when, and I think you're right about the cruelty thing with kids. Like kids will rattle things off their mouth that a lot of grown adults won't even hit below the belt on some of the things that they say. And with him, with being a father of a child who is being targeted or bullied or whatever, what I've noticed is the hurt that comes up for us as fathers is indescribable. I think, I've thought this many times myself, is like, I would rather go through this 10 times over than for him to experience this. And I remember growing up and being bullied, and the advice was, well, don't let him get to you. Ignore him, fight back. And I'm like, I don't know how to ignore it. I can't really get away from it because they're everywhere. And I'm not exactly sure how to defend myself. I'm really curious though, from your perspective, all the work you've done. And to be honest, man, I mean, I'm asking you this man to man because I would love the help and the advice. I love this strategy on the mountains, and identifying those and just to train your kid to go to gratitude. Is there anything else that you've seen that has been really helpful to help him navigate being bullied that maybe can help us listening to the show?
Well, he's in a little bit of a unique situation. He was being bullied verbally
Right.
and and some physically, but my son is not small and he is not weak, like physically weak. He's not, I shouldn't even say weak. He's not, I mean, he's a strong kid. And so the physical side of the house was pretty easy. I just said, hey, here's the deal. The guy that's pushing you around and punching you in the back of the head, you just look him in the eye and say, the next time you do that, I'm going to throw you down on the ground. It's not gonna be good for you. Just don't do it. Right. He's like, just tell him that. I was like, yeah, just tell him that. And I said, is he picking on kids that are smaller than him? And he's like, yeah. I was like, and you tell him that's going to be the same for them too. Right. That he can't do that to them either. So he did. And now the kid doesn't do that to the physical stuff. Right. So the kid's not picking on the other little kids, and he's not picking on Axel, my son, right? So the physical side was easy because of his stature, right? If he didn't have that stature, though, those that are with us are greater than those that are with them, right? That's the kind of the team you have to build, not to fight, just to unite, right? And if there's a united front there, that's what I tried to get him to do on the verbal side of this thing. On the verbal side of this thing, I'm like, well, what are you when they're saying this, what are you doing? And he's like, well, he chirps right back at him, right? And I'm like, well, that's just this. That's what they're looking for, right? And so I had him and his buddies. I said, you just got to come up with a phrase that you guys say that isn't like escalating it, but you say it and you walk every time, same phrase, just the same thing, right? And theirs, I think, was, we're not about that. And then they just leave, right? And it started to become this, gain this momentum where other kids are, we're not about that, and they all just and it, so it kind of just diffused the whole thing. I'm not saying that's always going to work, but that's, we kind of did a two-pronged thing. We did the physical because he had the stature to kind of back that up. Now if he didn't, he probably would have had to do something similar that he did with the verbal. Unfortunately, and I don't know if other people are experiencing this, teachers can't do what teachers could do when we were younger, right? and
Yeah.
I'm like, why isn't this kid that's beating up everybody, why isn't there like, and I to me that means that the kid's got, has some of his own issues that needs help. That kid needs help, right? The kid that's bullying, he needs some help, right? But you don't keep him in with everybody else where and just let him do what he's doing. That's just not okay, right? And yet that's been what's happened this whole school year. And I've been in and out with the principal and all these kind of things, and I'm like, and the principal says, well, your son doesn't listen to us like he listens to you. I was like, you haven't earned his respect. You got a guy over here that you're supposed to watch out for him for. They bring it up to you guys and you do nothing. Of course he's not going to listen to you. He doesn't respect you, and why would he? Right? You haven't earned it. You're supposed to be a protector just like I am. And if you don't protect him, why would he go to you? Why would he listen to you? Right? Why would any of these kids listen to you guys? Right? And honestly, he actually said that's a good point. He goes, yeah,
That's cool. I mean, at least he took ownership of it.
he did. I mean, what are you going to argue? Like,
Yeah.
if you don't protect these kids from somebody that they're saying they need protection from, why would they? Why do you
Right.
expect them to respect you?
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. Thanks for sharing that story, man. That definitely hit me in the heart when you shared that. And it's it's not easy for us as parents to watch our kids go through, things like that. It's really freaking hard, man. But thank you for sharing that level of detail with us. As far as just I would love to hear one more nugget of just resilience training. I mean, so you definitely told us about this attitude of gratitude, but really making it personal. So taking that step and also not repeatable. So identifying new things and also the knowing what our mountains are, right? The things that anchor us and ground us. Do you have another one you'd want to share that's pretty simple for us dads out there?
So one thing that I did preparing to engage the enemy was a process called chair flying, right? And to illustrate, I'll tell a story. I was rolling in to engage the Taliban. We got cleared hot, which means that we have met all the criteria to engage, and minimizing collateral damage and all that. So we're cleared hot by the ground guys to engage. So we're rolling out, and as we roll out, we just get shredded with bullets. My co-pilot takes around the leg, blows up his femur. His leg wraps around the cyclic, which is the control between our legs that makes the helicopter bank. And my engine got shot out, one of two engines. And so we started falling. My co-pilot is screaming, obviously, because he just took his femur exploded, which supposedly is like more painful than giving birth. So he's screaming. We're falling. Ironic. Well, what people don't realize is he's screaming, but he's priority number 3. My rotor had slowed down because the engine got shot out. So, and the flight controls between my leg was jammed up. I didn't know it was because his leg was wrapped around it. All I knew is it wasn't working. So I couldn't directionally fly the helicopter, and we're falling because the rotor's slowing down. I needed to deal with those two things before him. And so I dropped the control in my left hand. I non-intuitively, not intuitive. When you drop it, you go down, right? We're already falling. So when you pull it up, you go up usually. But if you're power limited, that's the opposite. If you pull up, it slows it down even further. You exacerbate the fall. You'll be the first one at the scene of the crash, right? So you have to go down with it, increase your rate of descent, add the airflow through the rotor system you put the angle of the blades in a certain way that they'll spin because of the air going through it. So you're gaining inertia so you can continue to keep your rotor speed up. So I did that. And in the helicopter, there's a backup control system, but you have to physically break the linkage in the controls to get to the backup fly-by-wire, which is kind of like sloppy no power steering flying. And So I slam that over at the same time I drop the other one down. He screams because I just unwound his leg that I didn't know was wrapped around that control. It does go into the backup. Then we level off and we come out of there. And now we need to work on his wound, which is a gigantic hole in the bottom of his leg. And so we start doing first aid and flying the helicopter, trying to keep the helicopter in the air for 30 minutes. For 30 minutes to get him back to base, where he had to get in reconstructive surgery and anything. Okay, so why do I tell that story? Because there's a lot of things that had to happen in like 1 second, 2 seconds, maybe 3 seconds, right? A lot of things that had to happen that if I had to physically think about, let me do this, now let me do that, well, let me do this, we would have crashed. There's just no doubt about it. So early on in my career, I learned the importance of chair flying, going through these type of scenarios, and it's as if they teach you chair flying and just run it through your head, but my version of chair flying is like meditation, visualization, and role playing had a love child. That would be my chair flying, right? So the first thing I do is make my mind fertile, or it's for my garden that I'm about to plant of wisdom, right? So that's the meditation piece. And for most people, you figure out what works for you for meditation. But this is just to tell you that you control this atmosphere, because a lot of people, if they're doing a what if scenario and they struggle with anxiety or whatever, that's just going to make them go crazy. But if you do the meditation piece and get, hey, this is an environment where I control, and then you start visualizing. And I would visualize things like my engine getting shot out. So my engine gets shot out. What are my actions going to be? First thing I'm going to do is take a quick breath, be calm. That's I rehearsed that in the visualization. Then I'm going to drop the collective down because I got to keep my rotor going. I'm going to push the cyclic forward because I need to keep a little bit of airspeed up. And I'm actually physically doing these as I walk through it. So that's the role play part of it, the muscle memory part of it. If I'm talking on the radio, I'm saying those words and I'm going to say them in the way that I'm going to say it, calmly, decisively, clearly. I did that through scenario. So as you're doing this visualization, you get to a choke point where you don't know what you're going to do. Like, you have to think about it. It's not like right on the tip of your tongue. When you get to that choke point, you work through it, figure out what you're going to do, and then I would start over. And I would get to where I would reiterate that scenario until I passed right through that choke point seamlessly, until I got to the next choke point. And then I would go back to the start. And we just do that over and over again with those scenarios. And then I would start doing like variables on it. Well, what if it doesn't work like it's supposed to? What if this happens, right? And then I would do that. If at any time, and this didn't happen to me, but I know guys that I've worked with, that they do start to get anxious because they're thinking of this what if stuff. If that starts to happen, you go back to your meditation. You go back to your meditation, you reset the playing field. Maybe that's it for the day. Maybe you can get back into it. Your goal of getting back into it, though, is getting further than you did before you had the last anxiety, right? So it's the same thing as exercising a muscle. Chair flying. What I didn't realize I was doing at the time was also a thing that's a medical term called stress inoculation. I was imagining stressful situations, traumatic situations in an environment that I controlled, inoculating myself for when the real event happened so that it wouldn't negatively affect me to the degree that it might have, right? So like a medical inoculation, you give yourself a weakened dose of a virus or whatever, and then when that virus shows up knocking at your door, you can pound your chest and say, keep on walking, I'm okay, right? It was the same type of thing with the stress inoculation. Before I blew a person up, I'd pictured it. It wasn't right because I didn't know what to look like, but I had already gone through pulling that trigger, the guy going away. What am I going to do? How am I going to feel? What's my next step? Am I going to freeze or am I going to continue mission? Right. So you go through those things and you're preparing your mind for those traumatic events. How does that apply in our day-to-day lives? Just 100% of the time, because we have so many things in our life that are difficult, right? Like whether it's conversation with a loved one, right? With a significant other. Those always go smoothly, right? We always say all the right things and react appropriately and always de-escalate the situation. I'm being sarcastic, of course, but like when you chair fly those conversations, hey, what normally happens here? Well, I say this and then there's an escalation. Well, I'm not going to say that. I'm going to do this. And then if this happens, then I'm going to do this. And you get to those choke points and you change that your your proven way of not working into a way that can work, right? And you're also inoculating yourself to any kind of traumatic event that way too, whether it be a difficult conversation or even just, I chair fly what I'm going to teach my kid. I chair fly how, well, if I present it to him in this way in the past, that doesn't get through, right? So I need to come at it from a different route and just walk through it so that when you're in those events, you're not reactive. You're already there. You've already trained yourself. You've chair flown it.
Very cool, man. I took some notes here. So chair flying meditation I wrote down, and then stress inoculation. Is this really just you go into the gym and you train a body part, right? You put it through the reps, you put it through, sustain damage so it can grow, right? So it can become stronger.
Mhm.
Is this virtually the same thing, but just doing it mentally and emotionally?
Everything I've said today is that same process, right? At first, it's hard to do because it's the first time you're doing it, but you create that process, you strain that muscle, it comes back stronger. You just keep doing it until it becomes second. My kid will say, my kid calls me buddy. Because when he was a little baby, I called him buddy, and so he started calling me buddy. I never corrected him, so he refers to me as dad when he's talking to other people, but to me, he always says buddy. And so he'll get after me like, buddy, you're talking to yourself again. I'm like, no, I'm just chair flying something. So
Just
like I will do it in the car. I'll do it. It's just without even thinking. I know something's coming up. I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to deal with it. I'll work through it. Right. And so when it happens, hopefully I nail it, but it doesn't mean you're going to nail it every time, but it definitely gets you more prepared. And I am a firm believer that it lessens the impacts of any kind of traumatic event. Right. So trauma, I always say trauma is powerful. It is powerful. It can be a millstone around your neck that drags you down, or it can be a solid foundation for you to stand on. Or a lightning bolt. I say it's a lightning bolt. Lightning bolt can kill you or it can light a city. Trauma can kill you or it can be your superpower. So it just depends on where you put it.
And this has been awesome. Your new book, which is Lessons Learned About Life, Love, and Leadership While Flying the Apache Gunship in Afghanistan, Cleared Hot, and why I believe a prepared mind can help minimize PTSD. And you mentioned it, PTSG, which is post traumatic trauma growth, right?
Yeah.
Which I've never heard that before.
Yeah. I thought I made it up, but I didn't.
Fa- Fascinating. It really is, because it really spins this into exactly what you said, which is somewhat of a positive. Because when we hear the word disorder, it's a it's a triggering word.
Mhm.
It's a word that we run through a filter of, now I'm labeling myself, I'm this, I'm that, and it's not really good. So um
Really
where can,
trying to fight the foregone conclusion that we as a nation, I'm not dogging a nation. We as a nation support our military. We do, which is great because in Vietnam they didn't, right? Certain other conflicts didn't have the support that we have, and I'm super grateful for it. But we, through movies, through everything, it's like this foregone conclusion that a man goes over and he comes back as a fractured version of himself, and that isn't even true of everybody, right? And those that it is true of, it's just because they haven't figured out how to digest that, what happened. And they're not broken. They have all the pieces. They just got to put them in the right order. Right? They just got to put that thing as foundational instead of something that's hanging off or on their or the rucksack that they're carrying around. They just got to figure out how to take that rucksack off. That's it. And so I I don't like focusing on the negative side of this thing because how many times have we've said this? So and so grew up in the ghetto, this happened, all these things happened to him. Despite all odds, they became this amazing person. That's baloney. They became that amazing person because of all those odds, right? It didn't happen despite, it happened because of. And it's a matter of using them as stepping stones and foundational tools and seeing them as happening for you, not to you. And then it's power. Then it's power. I talked to a buddy yesterday. He's like, he read my book. He's like, I love your book. He's like, I love everything about it. He's like, one thing that I don't have is that toughness. I don't have the things still bother me. I was like, look, I'm not saying that it can't bother you. I'm like, being bothering you is you being human. It bothers me too, right? And I have to come to terms with the fact that of things that seen and done periodically. I have to just accept that that was an experience that I had so that I could share and talk and come from a different perspective and help people to see things in a different way. I have to see the good of why that happened and where it benefits me. It doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. It doesn't mean that it's not impactful. It doesn't mean that it's not painful, right? But allow yourself to experience that pain and then categorize it and file it where it needs to be as something that happened in the past to help you now, right? File it where it needs to be filed.
That's really good, man. This has been this has been awesome. And I think you really gave the audience some very simple steps and something that is very implementable, you know, that they can literally, upon the adjournment of this podcast, they can implement these three things into their life to be more resilient. Brian, thank you so much for your service, man. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for your book and your message and helping people who have been through trauma and then some, you know. So thank you for all the work you're doing out there, man.
No, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Country's worth it.
And can you also give the audience the best places to find you, the book, and everything else?
Well, I'm on every social media as Brian Slade. Clearedhot.info, www.clearedhot.info has information on the book. The easiest place to get it though is Amazon. And it's Audible. It's on Audible. And I'm reading it, which let me tell you, I have bad respect for people who read books now because that took 16 takes for me to get one that was okay enough to put out there. But so it's there. From the book, you notice the hat says it's backwards.
Yeah.
Does it say it right? Does it say it
Yeah.
right? Okay.
Well, trauma is backwards, but I guess but
It's
trauma.
supposed to be. Yeah. So triumph over trauma. There's a website, triumphovertrauma.net, that is being built as we speak because we have workshops that we're putting together for people to turn their trauma into triumph. We will have on there also, if anybody who's listening that just wants to donate, because we have a nonprofit associated with this thing. Not everybody can afford these workshops. We keep them priced as best we can, but we still got to cover like the resort fees and things like that. So we have a nonprofit. Anybody that just wants to pay it forward with anything, there's going to be a little donate here. I don't know when this is going to air. Maybe it'll already be up. But
We'll put it in the show notes for you though, for sure. Whether
yeah,
it's up or not, because you know this goes live actually at this is going to go live the very first week in June. So if it's not up, not to
it, you give me that. I have a deadline now. We'll get
all
it up.
right. At
It'll be up.
June the 4th. This is when this goes live. So
It'll be donate here.
donate here. Yeah, if
Or
you got
if you know somebody that wants to go, or you are that person. I'm telling you, I had these experiences and I learned from them, and they really helped me out. But when I got back and I went through this type of a training, it wasn't specifically for military or whatever, and it really just put all the pieces together and let me accept what happened as what happened, and it's there to benefit me. It really made a difference, and I've seen it do it time and time again with people. So it's worth looking into. If you found friend, family, you don't have to be military first responder. Trauma is trauma, pain is pain. You don't have to be those guys. We all experience it. In my book, I talk about how it was more traumatic with my relationship than it was blowing up the enemy. People can relate with that.
believe they can for sure. I've had actually several special operators on this podcast, Green Berets and Navy SEALs, and one Navy SEAL in particular actually said, I think it was Larry Yatch. He wrote a book on leadership, and he said that going through his divorce was actually more traumatic than being in battle.
100%. I agree with him because we prepare for battle.
Mhm.
We don't prepare the same way. We don't chair flight divorce.
Right. Yeah, we don't. It's normally we're going along for the ride, and it certainly isn't pleasant at all. So,
So I
well,
agree with you.
this has been awesome. So, gentlemen, I'm gonna make this really easy for you. If you head on over to the dadedge.com/425 for the show, again, the dadedge.com/425. For this podcast, you'll get to connect with Brian. You'll see his nonprofit in there. You'll see a link to his book on Amazon and Audible, the whole 9 yards. If you want to, if please, by all means, support this man. He's doing good work in the world, for military or for anybody who's been through trauma. Thank you so much for coming on today, Brian. Thanks for giving of your time, the one thing we can't get back. And just thank you for all you're doing and your message, my friend.
I appreciate you having me and building this audience so that we can do these type of things.
Yeah, man.
Get the word out.
My pleasure. Gentlemen, go out and live legendary. Take care.